Gabriel Gatehouse there. So does a union of 28 European countries look like the best way to solve this crisis? And would Britain find it easier to work out its own response to immigration from the inside or the outside? Joining me now is the Labour MP Gisela Stuart, an outer, although obviously we're going to have a wider argument than that, and the Conservative MP Heidi Allen. And I'm going to start with you, Heidi. You're an inner, but really you've seen this for yourself. You visited the island of Lesbos, and when you look at the plan, the proposal that the Turkish PM is putting forward now, does that sound workable to you?
It does, providing some of the weak processing that I saw in Lesbos is corrected. The islands, as I saw them, were in utter chaos. There was nobody doing any kind of processing of paperwork or human beings at all. And yet they were promised money. They were promised all sorts of administrational support from Europe that didn't come. So I think the theory of this deal, putting aside all the legal debates, etc., is potentially a great one, but it has to be complemented by sort of real processes on the ground, and somebody needs to organise it.
I wonder if you can put aside the legal arguments. I mean, all this idea that it's a blanket ban, that you'd be returning people without questioning where they'd come from or what their backstory was, sounds unworkable and illegal.
Well, you know, I'm not an expert on international asylum law, but it feels to me that Europe is trying to find a solution, and a solution has to be better than none. And if that means, you know, parking the rule book for one moment for the better, you know, lives and life chances of these people, not throwing themselves into the Aegean Sea, then that's got to be worth looking at.
And they have come up with something, Gisela Stuart. They've come up with a plan that is potentially workable. Do you commend them for that? Do you see the importance of the EU at a time like this?
But part of the reason why we have the problem is of their own creation. If you go back when Libya, the crisis in Libya, and the Italians were trying to control their borders, and Mare Nostrum was not financed by the EU, Frontex took over. Frontex failed in Malta, Frontex failed in Italy, Frontex goes on failing. And we have this extraordinary situation that Guy Verhofstadt, early on in your piece, where he said we need to find a common answer. There comes a point when you say you are clearly failing to find that common answer. And the reason why because they're so wedded to the single currency and the free movement of labour, they were refusing to accept that there was a problem with Schengen, that when you didn't have internal borders, this wasn't working, and that just escalated.
Can I just check, are you suggesting that Europe has, in essence, created this problem now on its doorstep?
Well, Guy Verhofstadt was right when he said the countries are outsourcing the controls of their borders. The large European countries, Germany and France, have for many years outsourced the responsibility to Greece, to Italy, to the southern borders of Spain, without accepting what the consequences will be. This is now what is happening, the consequences of that failure.
And that outsourcing sounds like it comes at a price. You know, the sorts of concessions that Turkey is now asking for, that Turks would have visa-free travel by June.
It's huge.
And we're putting membership of the EU for Turkey on the table. It's massive, isn't it?
It does feel like a massive price to pay. And interestingly, I don't disagree with anything you've just said, Gisela, actually, that it's... and I think Britain feels a little bit like that. We've got this wonderful gap of the sea between us. We're all right, Jack, but actually it is now coming to everybody's doors. And for me, actually, that means there's a real opportunity for Europe to work together, because it can't avoid it anymore.
But 90% of the 1 million who came in the last year, even Frontex admits, are people smugglers, came in through that route. Nothing of this is addressing it. Turkey, which at the moment is behaving more illiberally than it has for a very long time when we wouldn't grant it membership, we had expectations. We're suddenly saying, yes, it's fine. We have a sequence of short-term solutions which, rather than solving the underlying problems, actually aggravate them. And if the politicians who made those decisions would pay the price, I could say, OK, but it's those thousands of people and children who are paying the price for political failure.
Would you concede at this point that membership of the EU for Turkey is worth it? You know, that is the direction that we need to go in now, and they're going to help us solve this?
Well, it's like all these things, you know, it's not a perfect in an instant acceptance. You know, there are hoops you have to jump through to be able to be accepted as an EU state, and I don't think it should circumvent any of those. But do I think we potentially have to put ourselves in a brave new world of finding a deal that suits everybody, because the problem is so large now?
And that would mean Turkey inside the EU?
Possibly, yes. But I think we have to look at all options, because you're right, when it fails, these poor people suffer. And if that means we need to get round a table that feels a little bit unpalatable to start with...
Do you think your party would be comfortable with that? I mean, do you think David Cameron, George Osborne, the ones arguing now to remain in, would be comfortable with that vision of an enlarged EU that included Turkey?
Well, I think at the moment they feel, you know, reasonably confident, dare I say, because despite this, you know, this potential deal that is coming forward with Turkey, we are, from an EU point of view, not obliged to take any migrants. I have a view that actually morally I think that's a different debate. Possibly we should take more, but there is no necessity for us to do. So in some ways we've got that special relationship that they talk about.
Gisela.
But I find this really quite extraordinary. As it happens, it's been our failure to really deal with Turkey properly and their membership applications, which I think has been part of the problems. But now that it is behaving so illiberally, at a time when it has a population that's about equal to Germany, and we're being told that these new arrangements, Britain will have a say, but their voting weight would be the same as Germany's. It probably would be larger than the United Kingdom's. This really does require thinking through, and it is not a short-term response to a deep systemic crisis. I would much rather go back and say, look at when Schengen serves a purpose, look at when the freedom of movement serves a purpose because it has a unit where it's required, strengthen dealing with smugglers. Frontex is not doing that. Strengthen what NATO is doing. Then we might just start to get somewhere, but not like this.
It's a combined strategy, isn't it? We need to look at
But there isn't one.
How many do you think we should take then? You said that you're not actually on the same level with the government as this one. Where should the UK's obligation go towards?
I think potentially it's a moving feast, and we need to be brave enough to say that 20,000 might not be enough. Or equally, if we do, you know, if this plan does work and we can work our way through the detail and we stem that flow and we start to separate between the economic migrants and those that genuinely need asylum.
Could you see it go up to 50? Could you see it being 100? I mean, you must have a sense of how far this reach would go.
I have a sense that it could possibly double. What I'm interested in certainly is around the orphan children. People use the language of unaccompanied. I'm trying to change that to orphan. These are children who there is no push or pull factor either side of them. They genuinely have not a soul in the world. Those people, those children specifically, I think we have an obligation to take.
OK. Thank you both very much. Thanks for coming in.